Hey everybody, Unstable Gamer here, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for stopping by. Definitely take a look around. Let me know what you think. Today we're going to be talking about Cruella De Vil in Disney Mirrorverse, coming to the game very, very soon. I had an opportunity to play test her, so I've got some thoughts that I want to share with you. But first, before we do, if you're just now finding this channel and you want to stay up to date with this and other games, consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out. All right, and welcome back. Cruella De Vil coming to the game very, very shortly. Had an opportunity to play test her, and I had a good time, actually. I enjoyed her kit, playing around with it. Now, when you take a look at her, she is a ranged character. You can see that ray gun in her hand. It looks pretty cool, actually. Let's turn her around here a little bit. I think they did a great job here. There you go. Very, very cool. So as a ranged character, I wouldn't really necessarily look at her as a damage dealer. She does some damage. She has an opportunity for some damage spikes. But when you're talking about good damage, you're still going to have Gaston. You're still going to have Zurg for that. I don't think she out damages them at all. But when you take a look at her kit, really kind of where she shines is crowd control. So with the dizzy and with the stuns and the roots, there's a lot of cool stuff there. So let's just run through her abilities really quick. After this, I'm going to leave you with some gameplay footage that I recorded. A lot of cool stuff, so really kind of curious what you think of that. So her core ability here, basic attacks inflict dizzy, that you can stack up to 4 times. That dizzy, when you take a look at it, reduces the accuracy of your opponent. So it reduces the chance of them landing a basic or a heavy attack, which is huge. Then the heavy attacks there hits one target. If it hits a opponent with dizzy, it's 25% chance per dizzy effect to root your opponent. So if you have all 4 stacks, 100% chance to root, and the root obviously can't be reapplied until after the root expires, and then it also removes all dizzy debuffs. So when we go to the ultimate here, this is cool. So all enemies in a line, all enemies in a line are rooted for 6 seconds, then are dealt 400% damage. Now, if their enemies are already rooted, they're stunned instead for 6 seconds, which is huge. So when you kind of think about who to pair her up with, you can pair her up with other guardians that stun or dizzy or root, and you're going to really have a ton of crowd control there. You can even put her with Tron, his massive stun. You're going to do a lot of damage there. So much crowd control here. Now, I know that typically you're not going to pair up 2 ranged guardians in a team, but there's a lot of potential there to play around with. And then when we take a look at her signet, as you increase the signet, this is max. You can max out at 30% damage, 60 and 90 for dizzy, rooted, and stunned enemies. So a lot of crowd control, like I said. Now, if we take a look at the talents here, the first couple basic talents here increases your focus and your attack. This is the first one that I really liked. So if we go into get them, you louts, if Cruella hits a rooted enemy with a heavy attack, that enemy gains lure. Now, at first I was kind of curious why. Why do this? Talking with the developer behind her kit and putting her together, that kind of plays with the fantasy of her ordering her goons around, right? It's like, get over there. This is what I want you to do. So it's kind of cool playing that fantasy piece there. But also, it could come in handy too because the lure, if you put the lure on the gatekeeper in the raids, then you are going to get a 20% attack buff to your allies, and you're going to go ahead and do some additional damage there. So I think it might play nicely with that. Haven't been able to test her in the raids just yet, but that's a thought that I had. Pit maneuver was another one that I thought was really good. So when Cruella dashes through an enemy with 4 or more dizzy debuffs, she removes all dizzy debuffs and she stuns them for 4 seconds. So as you can see, that 4 seconds is underlined. So as you increase the level of this talent, you're going to increase that time. So I thought pit maneuver was really cool, and I played around with that quite a bit. You'll see that in the gameplay footage where you just stack up those dizzies, and the enemy gets really close to you, and then you dash through the enemy, you stun it, and then you just let loose. You do some more damage. Rinse, repeat. It was pretty cool. It was fun to play around with, and I think there's some opportunity there for some great team comps and to take advantage of that. So get them, you louts. Pit maneuver, both of them I used. This subsonic lummox here, if an enemy is rooted or stunned by any of Cruella's abilities and has armor remaining, they are inflicted with an instant 300% shock. I didn't really play around with that. Don't really see a massive use for it, but especially if you're using Zurg to reduce the armor or just take away armor from your enemies. But there's some some practical applications for it as well. I just haven't had an opportunity to play with it much. And the other two I felt were better than this. And then this Auric Sonic Pistol I thought was cool. So while Cruella is in an encounter, her allies deal an additional 30% damage to rooted enemies. So rooting your enemies, obviously, not just for crowd control, but also for some additional damage. Again, you can throw that onto the Gatekeeper, do some additional damage to your Gatekeeper. Definitely want to play around with that. And then when an enemy inflicted with Dizzy debuff misses, they receive a minus 5% defense debuff. So you're reducing their accuracy. When they miss, you're reducing their defense. You're also increasing the amount of damage. And if they're rooted, you can see you can do quite a bit of damage there. So that's pretty cool. So I think that is definitely worth it. She was a lot of fun. I enjoyed taking her into the 1v1. I played around with her with the tower. That reminds me, if we take a look at her traits, she's good for leader tower. There's also some other traits there that would be good for the current iteration of raids that are going on, but there's also a wide variety there. So there's going to be some potential to use her in raids, obviously in dungeons as well, and some other areas of the game. So I think she's going to be usable, pretty usable. I think she's a lot of fun to play around with, especially if you like crowd control characters. Now, when it comes to where to place her on a tier list, I do have a new tier list coming out, my very first full tier list for global. The last tier list I did was a long time ago, and it was during beta. But I have a full tier list, and on that tier list, I got some cool things I want to talk about. But I do put Cruella on that tier list, and I was going back and forth between an A and a B. I think her control that she has over the battlefield is huge and can come to a huge benefit. Her damage really isn't there, though. So she may be an A, but I was being a little conservative where I was placing her, so I put her in a B slot. And I think really kind of depending on who you pair her up with, then you can even say that she's A depending on synergy. So, but right now I have her at B. Everybody else we'll talk about on the tier list video when that comes out tomorrow. But very excited to get that out to everybody, because putting stuff like that out, I always like doing it because it always generates a ton of conversation. A lot of good feedback comes from it. So back to Cruella. That is what we have for her. I'm going to leave you with gameplay footage now. Definitely let me know what you think. What do you think about Cruella? What do you think about the gameplay? Very curious on your thoughts and who you might think she might be good to pair up with in a team. All right, and that is what I have for you. I'm going to go ahead and leave you with the gameplay footage. As always, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts and questions in the comments section below. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the video.